You're listening to the Career Plus Life Catch-Up, episode number 70. Welcome to the Career Plus Life Catch-Up, a show anchored in reality to help you create a balanced life where you enjoy both your work and your life, because you don't have to choose. I'm your host, Cecile Ferry, a corporate executive turned coach and working mom. This is your place for insights, advice, and tools to optimize your career direction, balance, and confidence. I'm so glad you're here. Let's get into it. Hello, beautiful people, and welcome back to the podcast, and welcome to 2023. First, let me start with wishing you a happy, a healthy, a wonderful year in 2023. I really send all my caring wishes to you, to your loved ones, to all the people in your life that matter to you, and really wish that this year is going to be the next level, the next stage, and will bring you some amazing results and amazing success. That's what we're going to talk about today. Oh, it's so good to be back. I have missed it, and I'm sorry that you haven't heard much from me. I will explain more today, and I really appreciate that you didn't give up on me. You're still here, you still press play, and I really promise you that this year I will do my best to show up here as often as I can. So where have I been all this time? You might wonder. I had a lovely break over Christmas. It was pretty quiet for me given all my family is overseas. It's always kind of a light event for me here. I had my daughter over for Christmas morning, which was beautiful. And then I just love the slower pace of life. I ate way too much. I had my beautiful birthday on Boxing Day where I went out with my closest girlfriends, and you know, it's not about the things or the places, it's about the feelings and the people. And my cup was so full on that day, so I was extremely grateful. And then January came around, and I've gone away with my daughter for 5 days last week just to rest up and to disconnect by the beach not far from Melbourne, and it was very nice. She had an absolute ball. And I had a pretty good time too. So it was a win-win. And that really did a lot for my mental energy. I came back way more energized than I did when I was just in between the holidays at home. So I definitely think there is something about going away if you can. You may have seen, if not, here is the news for you. I have released a free yearly planner that you can download and complete in your own time to help you set your goals for 2023 and also reflect on 2022. So if you haven't yet grabbed your free copy, you can go to www.careercatchup.com/planner, and I'll put the link in the show notes. It's free, people, so highly recommend you check it out. So I'm officially back this year today. It's my first day back, and I had my first client before this podcast, and I loved it. And I'm like, oh, I have missed that. And it feels so good to do what you love, right? So I'm back here for you guys. And if you've been waiting, if you've been thinking about reaching out, now is the perfect time. You can book a time with me on my website at careercatchup.com/registration. You can get on a call with me for 30 minutes and we can talk about your career. If you do want help on the life front, you can book a life coaching package. I have kept the price as my first initial offer. I really want to make this as affordable for everyone because I do know right now. So I'm not increasing any prices for the time being. So if you do want some guidance to change something in your personal life, go and visit careercatchup.com/life coaching. So I've done all my messages for today, and we can move on with today's topic. So for this episode, the first one back this year, I wanted to talk about all my thoughts and my insights about the last year. I won't dwell too much on it because it's gone. But I will give you 3 lessons that I take from it, and I want to talk about what's coming for this year. A little disclaimer, this is entirely my perspective. This is what I see. This is what I feel coming. This is also the energy that I feel for this year. So it's up to you to take it or leave it, or to only take some of it. I believe that we are in a 5-year cycle that started at the beginning of 2020. And that cycle is about personal transformation. I think we've all felt it on some level. And so it's a 5-year cycle and we're entering year 4. So in my opinion, it's going to get better and we are nearing the end of the cycle. So the shocks are not as strong and the change is not as intense. But we're not fully there yet. So there's still some way to go. And that's how I want to frame today. So if you're ready to get into 2022 and what it means for 2023, tune in, let's get into it. Okay, so let's talk about the past for a minute. And if we do a bit of a retrospective of that 5-year cycle that I just mentioned. So it started in 2020, which was very much the year of shock and grief. If you're interested, you can go back, listen to episode 18. That was all about that year. So I probably don't need to remind you, we got hit hard in the face. It was like a big clash. And it was so sudden and so unexpected. It had a huge scope and a massive impact. We lost a lot of things collectively, and we had to learn to face those losses. And we all tried to adapt as best as we could. So it was a very reactive time and it was very chaotic. Then 2021, which I covered in episode 51. Don't worry, I'll put all the links in the show note for you. So 2021 was much slower. It felt like the time was stretching a lot. There was little movement or progress, and we all experienced more frustration, and it was frankly testing our resilience a lot. It was like being in the eye of the storm. We got the biggest lessons if we were open to them, if we were ready to hear them. And we had to dig deep to make it through that year. Some of us faced some changes in jobs or in relationships. It was basically a year of slow change, focusing on the decision to change more than on the actual implementation. But we felt all the feels that year. Then 2022 came around and we all thought, we're done. We're going to go back to normal, hopefully. I've actually released an episode in September, episode number 66, about the year already. And my prediction were right already then, that I have called the hangover. And 2022 was the recovery year, if you like, after the first 2 years. And a lot of us were experiencing some kind of PTSD. In other words, we were recovering from the impact of 2020 and 2021 on our nervous system, our mental health, and I will talk more about that today. And we felt it particularly because many of us didn't get a proper break at the end of 2021. So that carried across to 2022, and it was an extremely excruciatingly long year for those of us that didn't replenish. And I think that's the majority of us. So we definitely were not done and going back to any kind of normal or the end of the cycle. I think we can all say that in retrospect. We were still very much in the middle of the cycle. And even though it was a little bit quieter on the pandemic front, we got all sorts of other global crises. We had the war in Ukraine. We had all the impact on the banks, the inflation. We had natural disasters in Australia. So basically what didn't happen last year, right? So there was a continuation of instability, of ambiguity, and a lot of transformations, be it in the external world, in our external environment, or potentially within our own situation and own households. So from that, I have derived 3 lessons. It's more like 3 observations that I made that I believe really took place last year. Number one, we have learned the limits of our energy. And by that, let me be super explicit. Many of us have learned what burnout feels like. Many of us have burnt out, whether you were conscious of it or not, because it's not spoken about enough and it's just so part of the culture to hustle and bustle and to be busy and to push, that no one will question or particularly complain about how they were feeling. But I tell you from my own observation about my clients, about my friends, and my own situation, a lot of us finish the year in complete burnout. And that's okay. It was just a consequence of the prior years. So that's where I can explain where I went, because I really hit burnout gradually, but I know what it's like now because it happened to me 5 years ago. And I did a lot of things in my life in November because I was excited. And I think a lot of us did that last year because it was a very social year because we could catch up. We could do a lot of things. So it was like an overcompensation for the prior 2 years. And there was just tons of parties and events and catching up and things to do. And we said yes to everything because we wanted to. So I was part of that too. And I could start seeing that my energy, my life force and my mental energy were starting to run thin by mid-November. And I was still pushing myself because I did things, especially even fun things that I did on the weekend, things that I did for me that I enjoyed. And the more I did them, even though I loved them, but I was just pulling up out of bed feeling like I really needed to rest. And I really felt it in December, like my brain just started to really shut down ever so slightly every day. And every day I had less and less to give. So I attended to my important and urgent clients and I put them before everything else. But I posted also about that. Then I just lighten up the mental load for myself because I had to. I was not able. I could start seeing that I couldn't make decisions sharply like I used to. I could feel like I was being drained more easily. I didn't have energy for content creation, like for this podcast, which takes no energy for me, actually gives me energy in normal times, like now. Back then, I could not even think about what to talk about. Posting was too hard as well. So what did I do? I honored myself and I went a bit MIA. Because I just couldn't. I told you guys and I sent you one newsletter closer to Christmas. I would never leave you fully in the lurch, so you know. So if I'm a little bit away for a while, it's because I'm honoring my energy. I'm on my own in my business. I have no help. I do all of it. I have to make choices when my energy isn't at its best. And that wasn't the end of the year that I had planned. And I think a lot of people were in that boat. But I saw it and I honor it. So I think that's the first lesson from last year is because of the accumulation from 2020, 2021 and the fact most of us didn't have a proper break, we all felt it at the end of the year. And in a way, I like to see that with silver lining. Like we got to see what it feels like when we hit that low level where we can't give anymore. And for me, it's never a pleasant feeling, right? And you feel like you are letting other people down potentially, and you don't like letting your own self down, right? But to me, it's knowledge. And I know now to never let myself go too far. And I didn't push it, so my health stayed fine. But I just didn't have the mental capacity. So maybe for you, how did you finish the year? How did you feel? And did you realize how you were truly feeling? Did you put a name on it? Or did you keep pushing? And then maybe you're not in the best place right now as you start the year. A lot of people were burnt out. That doesn't mean that most people realize. I still saw people pushing for deadlines and things being done just right before Christmas. So the urgency culture is still out there. But the fact is, most of us could not handle it anymore. And personally, I'm taking this lesson into this year because I'm not prepared to keep pushing myself or to be in situations where it's push when people are clearly burning out. And I don't know you, but to me, 2023, I do not want any burnout. We need to start dropping that from our culture. I see this year as being the first year where we start saying no to burnout. And I invite you to be on watch out for that. Lesson number 2. Our nervous systems have continued to be impacted in 2022 and are frankly at a stage where they are heavily burdened and, if I can say frankly, hammered. Why? Because our fears have grown last year. So we have the fear of sickness. So there's still fear of catching COVID. There were lots of germs around. So that has been ramping up. The fear of death. That's very real with the war and with COVID. The fear of poverty because of the rising cost of living, the inflations and the cost of mortgages going right through the sky. And the fear of loss. So fear to lose our homes, our jobs, potentially our love relationships because of the external climate. So that is a lot more than our normal lot. We already have inner fears as such, as human beings, as we go through life, such as fear of judgment, fear of criticism, low self-worth, self-doubt, fear of not belonging, and so on and so forth, right? And then those fears, specifically that have come from the crisis in the world that we've seen, have just added the next level. It's not very uplifting as an observation for last year, but I see this as a pretty terrible time for humanity. I think it was nearly more and harder than the pandemic. We've lost a lot of our personal power through those rising fears and through lots of media consumption as well with all those events that have happened. And by that, I mean a lot of brainwashing as well that happens. And when you have a lot of those fears, you don't have your full mental capacity. It just takes the space, right? You can't think optimistic, positive, open, expansive things, new things in your life. No, you close down. You're like in full protection mode. So it diminishes your power. And what has happened last year is, as a result, we've grown more indecisive, especially if you combine and compound this with the fatigue I just talked about before. So all of us, I see in 2022, have been kind of floating, kind of drifting. We stop thinking for ourselves. We stop projecting ourselves. Have you made a big life decision last year of your own accord, not because of circumstances? From what I observed, there was not a lot happening. A lot of us were still getting by, as we say, going with the flow. But having all of those fears kind of felt like a bit of a regression, if I can say, of humanity. Our abilities as human beings were somewhat toned down. And we were still very much under the spell of what was happening externally, plus the fatigue that we brought on. So it wasn't a year where we were showing up for ourselves. I know this doesn't sound like the most positive lesson, but bear with me because being aware of that is very important in order to go through 2023 with the most success. And lesson number 3 from last year is that we have learned some powerful internal lessons. So what they are is very different from one individual to the next. But it could be about relationships, so understanding who is good for you and who isn't. It could be about habits and routines, understanding what needs to change. Or it could be about yourself and that relationship with yourself, understanding some old beliefs that no longer serve you, understanding your past, understanding your conditioning, understanding all patterns. So last year was the place and the time for some of those things to come up to the surface. Obviously, if you were ready to allow for that, if you made space in your life, if you kept running around everywhere and kind of didn't sit with yourself, probably this didn't really happen for you. And it's still there for you to grab. But that is part of the 5-year cycle. So I see that as like the eureka moment where things were revealed, when we started to understand a lot of things and to make sense of what had happened. You know, it's like the first 2 years gave us a lot of shocks and rocked us and pushed us to our core. And then year 3, okay, we were sitting with all of that and we let things unfold and come up to the surface, and we learned so much. It was definitely my experience, and especially in the last 3 months of the year, I did a lot of inner work on myself. Some things happened in my personal life that put me on a track to learn more about myself, understand more my childhood, my conditioning, my inner blocks when it comes to self-worth and self-love, to help me see where I had been procrastinating, to help me see the difference of my thoughts with my ego versus my intuition. So a lot of those things were revealed for me. And I know that a lot of my clients and friends have had similar journeys where things have come up to the surface. And so I'm going to call those interpersonal transformation. They may not look like yet things in your life, but the understanding has happened. So it was very much about mental work in 2022. And for some of you, it could even be on the spiritual front too. That could have been beyond the mental to some kind of renewal on a spiritual level as well. So a lot of things kind of moving and changing and emerging from deep down that now we can build on in 2023. So here we go. Now let's talk about the outlook for this year. I feel very optimistic for this year because, as I said, we are approaching the end of the cycle, and it's time for implementation, it's time for action, and for reaping the benefits of all our efforts, all our work over the last 3 years. But I'm not saying it's going to happen fast, and we're going to still be patient. Those things will unfold over time. And remember, there is another year after this year as part of that cycle. My main insight, and that is true for myself, and hopefully it will resonate for you also, is that now and this year is the time for personal agency. It's time to regain our power as individuals, our power of thinking for ourselves, and our power of action, of forward movement, and of creating results. It's time basically to regain power over our circumstances, because our circumstances have led us a lot, and they had to, and nearly too much, you could say, by 2022. And now we need to swap that ratio and take ownership back in our lives. Because the truth is, for a while, we've been waiting. We've been waiting for things to get better, for things to calm down, for things to return to normal, which we all know by now is not going to happen. We've been waiting for things to change. And now it's time to regain the control over our lives. So I think we've fallen a bit into a habit, or some might say a trap, of being very externally focused for quite a long time. And we use that lens to live, and we've gone into that habit and that pattern, and we don't really question it after some time. But it tends to define how we are feeling, what we feel ready for, and what sort of day or week we think we're going to have. Have you noticed? I definitely have had that. I've realized that I was setting my mood based on the external vibe I was getting from the world or my environment and what was happening. And I wasn't driving anything from myself. And that's my main insight, as I said. We've been doing a lot of waiting, a lot of hoping, or focusing on what wasn't good around us, what was not possible. And let's be clear, we can always find that. But I think by doing so, we have lost a part of ourselves, like our mojo. And we've just been floating along. And right now, what I'm talking about here is what you could say a little emotional pep talk, or all the way to a little kick in the ass that we need to get out of that state and rise up again and believe in what we can do and start moving forward again. The storm has passed, or whatever is left is still going to be there ongoingly. Like, that's what we've got. It's time to trust ourselves again. It's time to rebirth, to come back stronger, to move on to our next level. It's time to stop waiting. My yoga teacher had this beautiful phrase she got from her own teacher that said, don't spend your time in the waiting room of life. And I think that encapsulates really well where we're all at the end of 2022, and the energy of 2023 is to get out of that waiting room and to start stepping out into the real world again and to do things for ourselves. It's time to stop waiting. It's time to stop being bored in our lives and just living day by day. A lot of us have become so comfortable in the day to day. But where is the fun? Where is the joy? Where is the substance? Where is the meaning? Like, are we getting up out of bed excited? I know for me, that has dulled down. And that had become my new normal. And I realized, hang on, it's time for a shake up. We can't stay in PTSD for another 6 to 12 months. I mean, we can, that's a choice. But that is not what we need right now. We have to change that attitude of just waiting for external things to happen. Or we can't act like we're waiting for life to be better or to be rosier in some kind at some stage in the future. It's not. What we have right now is what we've got. That's the truth. We just have this mixed bag of circumstances around us that are not great, but that's where they are. And we need to make the most of our life now and not just like postponing it until when. I think it's just an attitude that we've taken to put things kind of on hold, and we all need to get back on track in 2023. Okay, so I hope you didn't mind this big kind of pep talk. Let's get it moving, because I gave myself that pep talk and I felt so much better after it. And I realized I was just waiting. And waiting can be so frustrating when things don't move, right? And don't happen. Waiting, scrolling, all those things that we do to drift, to kind of buy ourselves some time and, or look at something in the future. Like after that day, maybe I do something. Like we don't live our lives now. And I've realized I was ready for that. There was spare space there and I needed to get moving. So I'm going to give you 3 steps concretely if you are here and you're like, okay, but how do I do this? Number 1, rest if you haven't rested in the last couple of weeks. So you need to repower. So those of you that have felt some kind of burnout, that haven't stopped, that have pushed themselves, that haven't had a proper break or holiday in a long time, and you know who you are because you know how you feel on a daily basis. Look, I'd love to say to you, just do a few things, you'll be okay. The truth is you can't dodge that. You can't dodge that recharge, rest period. So you need to make room in your life right now with whatever you've got on. You need to scale things back. You need to decommit. You need to make space for rest, for sleep, for regeneration. That is not optional, because unless you do that, everything that I'm talking about that repowering for this year is just going to go right over your head. You won't have the capacity for it. And I couldn't be here recording this podcast if I didn't do that and went away and it took me 5 days and I came back repowered, re-energized. So invest if you have to. This is really what you need. So if you're not there, do that step. If not, move to step number 2, which is to get rid of the extra luggage that we accumulated in the last couple of years. By that, I mean the people who bring drama in your life. You know who they are. The rubbish that you get fed, and I mean by that literally food-wise or metaphorically, the things that we absorb in the media. It's time to get rid of the bad, lazy, unhealthy habits we have picked up during the last 2 years. And it's time to get rid of the extra fears that I talked about today. We need to do a fear detox because it frankly has gone to a level that is not sustainable for us. And we need to drop some of them. So start with listing the fears that you have and then catch yourself, because you will see they will come up a lot and a lot every time you're looking at anything, anywhere. So I'm onto that with myself, and I've already got rid of quite a few fears and I feel so much better. Remember, fear is something that lives within your mind, is your interpretation of the world. And then get rid of the blame. We're really good at blaming external circumstances or people. This is not going to help us anymore this year. So, gotta get rid of all of those things. And step number 3, focus on you. That is so important. So once you've done that work, once you've rested, once you got rid of all those things that, frankly, we've been hiding behind in the last couple of years, and it's got worse last year, we need to declutter and get back to ourselves and decide on what we want for this year. Like we said, every year you got to have goals, but this year, I don't feel like we've had many goals in the last 2 years. Because we couldn't, but this year we can. And this is the time to dust ourselves off and come up with real big kick-ass goals that we feel really excited about. And a goal isn't 3 things that look like a to-do list, like a big to-do, if that makes sense. You know, something that you know you should do or you have to do and you make it a goal. No, it needs to excite you. And it needs to be outside of your comfort zone. So go and ask yourself, what do you want now? What would be really good for you? And act like nobody's watching or nobody cares. Do what you've always wanted to do. That is the work right now. Get back to that and use my planner if you need to. Be very definite on your goals. That's the word now for this year. See, it's all about you, and it's about decision, and it's about determination, and it being definite. We can't be wishy-washy, living it to kind of plans, see what happens, and depending on other things. No, this is the year where we get back in the driving seat. We know it's going to take some time, but it starts with us thinking. So be very clear on your goals and make a plan. And what is the number one thing that you need to sort in your life? Start there. Maybe that's just one goal. That will re-energize you so much. And you will realize you have agency now over a lot of things. But we all need a little bit of a push to get back into action. Because right now we kind of settle back into that waiting room aspect that I was talking about, and then we're waiting for things to come from the sky so we feel more engaged and more joy. You know what? The joy will come from us. So start to restart the machine, restart the engine. So that was my main message for the start of this year, for my first podcast back this year. It may not have been what you had expected of me, but that's what has come to me. And that has been my own personal experience. And I can already tell you, for me, I got into that energy maybe 2 weeks ago. And so many things have already shifted positively in my life when I'm okay, it's on to me. I can do this. Of course, I have the energy now to do it. But I'm onto myself and I'm making real goals again. I'm giving myself pretty much all of January to do that. So it's not like you got to rush it. Take your time, but decide. And regain that power and you will start seeing things shifting around you. And that feels amazing. So it's like you've got to be your own best friend right now and you've got to go take yourself by the hand. You've got to advocate for yourself and go back to what is it that I want and regain that power over things happening around you. So I hope this has massively inspired you to get into this year with your eyes and your heart wide open, ready to really welcome a lot of positive things, positive changes in your life. And I'm here to support you to make it all happen. So reach out, let's make it happen together. And let's make 2023 your best year yet. Are you excited? Are you coming? I'm here with you and I can't wait to see what happens. Take care, everyone. Have a beautiful week and a great month of January. I will speak with you soon. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to find out more information, you can visit my website at careercatchup.com. There you will find blog articles, free resources, a self-study course for your career direction and ways to work with me. It's at careercatchup.com. I hope to continue to connect with you and support you. Talk to you soon.